of highway safety. So as you can tell, we have quite a full agenda we have to go through. Maybe dogs. A lot of bulldogs around here. There's several blue hose in the chambers, both the Senate and the House.
It's the good stuff now, right? Good, Andy.
Oh.
Perfect time. Well, then, that motion you do.
What? Courtney, do you have the? As folks are coming back in, I did want to point Representative Holcomb, if you would. There was in the PowerPoint that was given to us by the accountability courts. There are a bunch of slides in it, obviously, but there's one, and it's labeled diversion savings, and so this actually goes to the question we were asking before. And you'll see there's several slides in here that go through the diversion savings, one of which is an annual savings of about $232 million that has gone up from 2013 when this was initiated at $47 million to 232. And then there's a comparison of the values of investment, but that's fairly significant. What I think we're trying to ask them for is a comparison in terms of what does that mean in terms of savings, how are they calculating those numbers over what years. We have the years here, but what's the methodology used? So I did want to draw your attention to that we do have the information provided to us. It is quite substantial. But what would that have represented in terms of incarceration? Is that a net or gross number? I don't know. But I think Taylor is going to provide us a little bit more accurate statements with more detail. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Chris Barnett, and he is our director for the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. And I thank you so much for being here, Chris. I'm sorry to have made you wait as long as we have. Obviously, it's just digging into these issues takes a little longer this year, and so I appreciate you being here. And I know you have a couple of additional things you want to cover with us, so we'll let you start off and get right to the budget items, and then we can talk about those additional items you wanted to share with us.
Fantastic. Chairman and committee members, it is an honor for us to be here and talk a little bit about parole. If I can, with the chairman's agreement, just recognize a couple of staff members I have here with me today on this special occasion. To my left, your right, is my Chief Financial Officer, Lisa Reed. It saddens me to say that this is her last committee meeting, as after 34 faithful years of service to the state of Georgia, she will be retiring effective this Friday. So congratulations, Lisa. Now, I don't know if the proper word is congratulations or condolences, but the young lady standing right next to her is Miss Tracy West. And she will be taking over Lisa's responsibilities with our agency as the Chief Financial Officer. Tracy comes from a military background with the U.S. Army. has been with the state for more than 17 years, with the State Parole Board for more than 7, has a bachelor's degree and 2 master's degrees in finance and accounting. So anybody that can keep my budget straight, I think she's ready to go. So we're excited about having her on board.
Congratulations. If Chairman Belton was here, I'd let you make some cracks on the armed services relevant to the Air National Guard, because he would enjoy that. But he's actually presenting a bill right now, so he can't be with us now.
Absolutely. Now, we have prepared a very brief presentation for you today, highlighting some of the activities the board has taken on over the last several years to become a more effective and efficient state agency, and to kind of highlight some of our successes and how the amended FY20 and FY21 budget is just a continuation of that process. If y'all are looking for the presentation, I believe it's in a black plastic handout with a clear plastic cover. Back in 2015, the Parole Board redefined its core mission and quickly devoted all available resources to the accomplishment of the task. And the core mission is simply to make informed clemency decisions that ensure public safety, protect victims' rights, and provide offenders with opportunities for positive change. The next slide. Once the board redefined its core mission, we, the operations unit, set about a process of continuous evaluation of our people, processes, and technology, searching for opportunities to enhance the board's operational effectiveness, efficiency, but most importantly, the quality of its work. While it's difficult to quantify, enhancing the quality of the information going to the board no doubt leads the board to making better informed clemency release decisions, and ultimately leads to greater public safety for all Georgia citizens. As you can see from the slide, and for time's sake, we've highlighted a few of our process and technology enhancements implemented over the last 4 years. I won't go over those today, but also, if you look at the yellow tab in your packet, you will see all of the process and technology advancements we've done over the last 4 years, and I'll spoil the ending for you. It's about 6 pages of bullet point style enhancements to our processes and technologies that we've done over the last 4 years. For our most important and valuable resources, our people. Not only as an agency do we want to make sure we have the right people on the bus, but we want to make sure they're on the right seats on the bus, and quite frankly, that the bus is going in the right direction. So, how have we been doing? If you'll turn to the next slide. 4 years ago, the Parole Board had 201 allocated full-time positions. At the end of FY19, we had 186 full-time positions. This is a reduction of 15 positions, or 7.5% of our total personnel count. We accomplished this by identifying those administrative, clerical, indirect support mission positions, and as they became available through retirements and transitions, we froze those non-critical positions and reallocated that fund source to support bringing on the core mission, professional level positions, our criminal investigators, our hearing examiner, our field operations officers, to enhance the operational effectiveness of the agency. If you'll turn to the next slide. During that same period of time, we saw an increase in our case production, that is the number of cases going to the parole board, of 45.6%. So let me just repeat that. We reduced our personnel count by 7.5%. We increased our production by 45.6%. All while, and I hate that the accountability courts went before me because I was really ready to brag, all the while maintaining one of the highest parole success rates in the nation. We are normally between 12 and 15% above the national average. Right now we sit at 71%. But now I know that the accountability courts are at 73. I'll get that number here shortly, all right? Along with that success rate, we reflect a return on investment or a cost avoidance to the state of $433 million annually. So an investment of $17.2 million returns to the state in cost avoidance, that is prison time versus supervision in the community, $433 million. So I believe all of this illustrates the power of having the right people in the right place, using updated processes and technology, all have which led the board to have a very positive operational profile. Your next slide is again a copy of your track sheet. It may be a little bit blurry, so you may want to go to the next one. And I'll just go down through the line items. Our amended FY20 budget submission is simply a continued evaluation of the board's operation with an overall goal of reduction of $734,145. The proposed agency annual operating budget reductions for both amended 20 and 21 fall into three categories. That is, a reduction in our regular operating expenses, contract reduction, and reduction in force/vacant positions. In the board administration program budget, line number 35.1.1, reduction in funds by eliminating 2 vacant positions. That is the support operations director position, which was vacated due to a retirement. All of those duties and responsibilities got handed over to my right hand, which is our deputy executive director, Rita Rocker, back there in the back. She's very happy about that too. Next is the mental health specialist, which that young lady moved to China. And we found that instead of employing another full-time mental health specialist, it was much more effective and efficient to contract with a local mental health provider to do those individual tasks that we need done. However, and so the total reduction is $296,631 for that line item. Now, we would ask this committee to actually reduce that reduction to that line item by $79,133. $79,133. This request comes to additional information that was not known at the time of the budget submission. That additional information is the fact that we had 2 long-term employees, one of which is standing right here next to me, retire from our board administrative program. These 2 employees will cost the agency slightly over $97,000 in annual leave payout as well as ERS employer share contribution. This change will help the agency offset the impact of these retirements and ensure that, I'm sorry. Can you just,
just get more expensive.
I told her I was looking out for her best interest. I said if she would just stay on 11 more years, she could get 90% of her retirement. Yeah, it didn't work. I've tried. I tried. But certainly this movement or this reduction in this program budget will help us end the year in board admin in a positive budget profile. Now, this reduction will be offset with an increase in withholdings in our clemency budget. Just to be clear, we're not looking for a reduction in the overall cuts. This is simply a reduction in board admin to make sure that we have a positive finish and an increase in reductions in our clemency division, which again is our largest budget and can absorb it without issues.
So, to be clear, we're going to take what, 79,000 out?
Yes.
And we're going to pull that into clemency, right?
Yes, sir.
So it's not going to change the net cut. It's just going to be a shifting of what savings what you're experiencing in terms of your board administration payouts. You're going to pick up from taking that out of your clemency division.
That is correct, sir.
Okay.
Yep. 35.1.2, reduce funds by decreasing computer refresh. Total reduction is $26,925. Just to put that in context, that's about 17 complete setups. That includes a computer, docking station monitor, peripherals, as well as licensing for Google and Microsoft. 35.1.3, reduce funds to renegotiate contract. That is, we have been contracting for our procurement services outside of the agency. We actually brought that in-house, and so we are offering up what is remaining of that contract for these cuts. 35.1.4, reduce funds by limiting travel. Travel is really an overall title in this tracking sheet. Really, it's all of our regular operating expenses. We have canceled all non-essential travel, and all purchases are reviewed by 2 managers. In our clemency decisions, program budget, 35.2.2, reduce funds by renegotiating contracts. Again, these are contracts with Georgia Tech, Applied Research Services, and TeleQuest. Total reduction, $27,168. However, we are asking this committee to increase that reduction by $26,000. This increase is to partially offset the decrease in the board admin program. This request would make this line item reduction $53,168. So for that line item, it would be $53,168. 35.2.3, reduce funds by decreasing computer refresh. That's 41 computer setups. Total is $65,000. 35.2.4, reduce funds by limiting travel. Again, regular operating expenses, and that's $29,500. 35.2.5, reduce the funds eliminating one board confidential assistant position. Again, these positions, 5 years ago, we had 5 confidential assistants, and we were a very paper-based organization, and they would move files from one office to another. We are now about 95% electronic. And so there's no longer that need to move paper files from one member to another. So that total reduction is $77,993. 35.2.6, reduce funds for 2 positions to reflect a restructure, and that is the Deputy Director of Field Services and the Confidential Assistant for Field Services, with a total reduction of $102,022. However, again, on this line item 35.2.6, we are asking the committee to increase that reduction by $53,133. That would again offset the decrease in reductions in board admin budget, and that would make this line item reduction be $155,155. And finally, our third program budget is victim services. Line item 35.3.1, reduction of funds for 1 vacant part-time position at the total of $22,620. And that would make the total agency net $743,145.
Question from members of the committee. Representative Williams.
Yes, I know I get some good answers, 'cause we did a good job of training you, Chris.
You know, Liberty County, you either get with it or you get lost.
That's right. First question, this one, I just wrote it down, and I've heard it said several times. Tell me what a confidential assistant does. That sounds so clandestine. Please tell me. I don't know.
It really isn't as clandestine as you think. But it used to be that we had one person assigned to a single parole board member, and that individual kept the board members' calendar, moved all of their files, handled all their mail, all their confidential correspondence. Everything was handled through that one individual. As we have moved further and further away from the paper process to the electronic process, we have continued to reduce that, where now all 5 board members share 2 confidential assistants.
Okay, that answers it. My secretary did all of that, and I just called her secretary. She's very confidential. That was a fireable offense. I was just wondering what she had. But my big question, what I'm really concerned about, you're going completely electronic, and you're scanning everything like that, and funds are being pulled out for 2 years. You're going to be able to operate efficiently. There are no funds for computers for the next 2 years, and when the state board is completely electronically run, how are you going to be able to do that now? I don't know about your computers, but mine break a lot, but go ahead.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Our agency, we have the ability that 100% of our staff are able to telework, which is a great thing, but they have to have the equipment available in working order to be able to telework. We do run into break-fix issues. We also run into the fact that older computers will not run newer software. And so while we're confident that we can make it through this budgetary cycle, If it goes much beyond that, we will have to come back to you and ask for additional funds for that refresh, because we are already in a position. I had a meeting yesterday with our budget folks where we're having to we're currently running Microsoft Office from 2010, but our newer computers won't run that license, so we have to buy all new licenses for the new computers. And so it's just an added-on expense.
Okay. Well, I'm sure everybody knows that you 2 years out on your budget, so you'll get some letters from them soon telling you everything else is outdated and you got to update.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Director, we had talked a year or two ago about kind of triaging your cases and your protocols so that the board, the numbers of cases that made it to the board level were astronomical. And we had talked about effectively utilizing staff to screen these cases out, effectively dismissing them from the board's inquiry and review, so that the board wouldn't be burdened with all those and could spend more time and attention on the I guess the more needy cases, the more justified cases, the ones that may also be problematic. How has that gone? Has it been implemented, and to what extent has that been effective in reducing the cases that the board is reviewing? Would you comment on that?
Yes, sir. We spoke specifically about those cases in which the board had already made a clemency decision for a future release date. And 90 days prior to that release date, we do what is called a final review. So we go back into that case and see what that individual's behavior, program completion, and everything else has been since the board made its decision. At one point, if there was any disciplinary issues whatsoever, that case was immediately referred back to the board. During a period from April 2016 to October of 2017, we referred 3,861 cases back to the board because of disciplinary reports. Working with the board...
Out of how many?
That was all of them.
No, but out of the total cases for that year, that period, I don't know what that means relatively speaking.
So back in 17, we released, I believe it was just over 10,000 individuals.
In 17?
Yep.
And then that 3,861, what period of time was that?
That's from April of 16 through October of 17.
Okay. And so during that same period of time, is that the same period of time that you released 10,000?
Approximately, yes, sir.
Okay, so it looks like about a third cut. Mm-hmm. A third of those cases were referred back to the board.
Yes.
And is that, so that 3.8?
Well, I would not, again, when they referred back to the board because of disciplinary issues, they most likely were not released.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I can go back again in your slide. I think I know what you're asking.
So otherwise, how many cases did you?
Yeah.
So that
in FY17, which I think is your fourth slide in that presentation, FY17, the board saw 20,112 cases. Okay. Of that 20,112 cases, 3,861 of them were referred back to the board solely because of a disciplinary report received between the time the board made its original decision and their release date.
And how many were not referred back to the board?
I don't have that number for you.
Okay.
I don't have that number for you.
Because that's what we're trying. What I'm trying to get to is how many cases did that process save essentially?
Well, I can reflect the next step on that. So during that period, April 2016 to October of 2017, we referred 3,861 cases to the board. From November of 17 to May of 2019, same amount of time. After we implemented the new process, we referred 1,268 cases back to the board. So that showed a 67% reduction in the number of cases going back to the board solely because of a disciplinary report that was received.
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And then also, how in your estimation, if any, are the proposed budget cuts going to impact your ability to perform the core mission that you have to perform with the state pardons and parole?
Again, during this budget cycle, we believe that we can absorb the cuts recommended by the governor without any impact to our service delivery or service to our customers. However, if it continues, the areas which we have concerns are, again, as Representative Williams brought up, our computer refresh and ability to stay up with today's technology, which is really what's driving our ability to conduct our work. And second, as of right now, I have 38 people that are eligible to retire today. By the end of this budget cycle, 30% of my personnel will be eligible to retire. With the decrease in funds, we have very little lapse to cover those retirements. In fact, the House last year was gracious enough to give us $343,000 to cover retirements because we simply do not have the lapse to cover those retirements. Outside of retirements, we boast a less than 1% turnover in our agency, which is great for the experience, but it costs us down the road. Mm-hmm. Second, because of the reduction in the regular operating expenses, I'm unable to provide that leadership and management training, right? That APPA Leadership Institute, the CLE classes and others, to prepare those individuals that may assume the roles and responsibilities of those individuals retiring. So in the future, we may see a dip in our production if we cannot get these individuals ready to assume those responsibilities.
How many vacant positions, unfilled positions does the board have? Not the board, the entire department.
The entire agency, I wanted 6. 3.
3 unfilled vacant positions.
And I could fill them tomorrow if I had the funds.
But part of these cuts is taking those funds away, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's a part of we are not. There will be no funding for those 3 positions. Is that correct?
Not that I know of, no, sir.
And what would those positions be doing if they were filled?
1 criminal investigator and 2 hearing examiners.
Okay, so exactly what we're seeing in the budget here in terms of cuts.
Those are our core mission folks that we would like to bring on, okay, and move forward.
And why are they important?
Again, when we talk about presenting more than 20,000 cases to the board, we need that professional level criminal investigator to go out and not only interview the DAs and the judges and the sheriffs and gather police reports, indictments, transcripts, and compile all that information up to the hearing examiners. The hearing examiners then consolidate all that information and put it through our guideline system, summarize everything for the board, and they actually make the presentation to the board. So if I don't have criminal investigators, I don't get cases investigated. If I don't have hearing examiners, I don't get cases presented to the board.
And does that decrease the likelihood of anyone that would otherwise be eligible for parole being released and put on parole or probation?
Certainly, it could have an impact on the consideration by the board.
Okay. If didn't we look at this 2 years ago, and you made the request for the additional criminal investigators, and we put those in the budget? Were those positions filled? How long have these, and if so, how long have these particular, the 2 that you're asking to cut now, how long have they been vacant?
The 2 criminal investigators y'all approved through the last budgetary cycle, and so they were authorized July the 1st, and we actually hired them July the 1st. We jumped on it because, again, if we say we need them, we need them. So we got them in the door on July the 1st. Since that time, we have lost 1, and we have held that position. The 2 hearing examiner positions, again, 1 came open in August, and 1 came open January the 1st. And again, we're holding those positions pending final budget.
Okay, thank you. Representative Williams, you have a question?
Question. You were instructed to bring all salaries on the board up to equal status.
Yes, sir.
Were you provided funding to do that?
No, sir.
You wasn't. Where did that money come from?
Much like when we did in the previous slides where we've, through attrition, administrative staff have retired, transferred, and other. We have reallocated those funds into professional level staff. We've done the same to cover that cost to the agency.
Very quickly, so what you're saying is the very distinguished and capable lady to your left is going to help increase salaries again by leaving?
No, because she's in board administration.
I know, I'm messing with you, Chris.
And we're bare bones.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Mr. Director. I appreciate the presentation. We have no other questions that I see. You do? Okay. Go, Bill.
Thank you, Chairman. After a 2-year stint of visiting our state prisons and learning the prison system, I turned my attention to pardon paroles, and I spent 6 hours last year with Director and Deputy Director Rita back there. A lot of times when we move away from a hands-on person to electronic, that might give concern. I will say in this instance, it is the exact opposite. The efficiency for them to have at their fingertips on every case, everything literally from the police officer's arrest with photographs all the way up to the latest DR that happened in prison last week. The volume of information that they can click through, gather, get, query the investigative officer is just incredible, which there's just no way you could do that in person. And so the system is, if there's anything close to a flawless system, y'all have got it. And I think that's why they're seeing the amount of cases they're able to do. And they've got a flow chart that covers several walls. That it's a very complicated system, but y'all, I just wanted to commend you and appreciate the time y'all took with me to go over that, because it's a great system.
We do really appreciate those comments, and there is a reason why other states come to Georgia to learn how to do parole, because we are the #1 clemency making decision body in the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Director.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you to your staff and the service that the men and women provide.
Just Chairman, just to make sure. Now that was 20. Do we want to go over 21 or many of it is just pushed forward?
It is.
And anything else I can talk to Courtney about?
No, I think they're all, the ones we saw that were pushed forward. You have the one-time funds for the criminal investigator positions. Again, that was for the 2 that we talked about before. There was reclassifications of one of your office manager's positions that we saw there, and a reclassification of the senior secretary position. Those are the main ones that I saw that were different.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the service that you're providing to the state. Also to the board members and their hard work, because it is not an easy job to do what they're doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the continued support.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is going to be, where did I put it? Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training Council. Gordon Henderson is up next, but Gordon is not here.
Somebody's coming.
We're on section 39.7 of your track sheet and the budget. And it's also pages 289 through 91. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm not Gordon. He's our executive director. He is out with the flu, so gladly he has stayed at home today. I'm sure y'all can appreciate that.
I hope he gets well.
Yes,
soon.
Absolutely. My name is Tony Pritchett. I'm the chairman of the Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training Council, and I will be presenting on his behalf today. Just a short rundown. As far as our agency, as most of you are aware, we're responsible for the regulation of the Georgia Fire Service's 30,000 firefighters, over 600 fire departments, and making sure that the minimum standards under code are followed, and that we do the certifying testing of firefighters for the certification across the state of Georgia. We have a limited staff to do this with. We have 10 personnel in our agency that do an excellent job. Last year, we've done approximately 12,000 tests were issued throughout the state. And we have folks that go out to each one of the fire stations throughout the state of Georgia to inspect and make sure records and data are kept up to standard by the state code, and to provide whatever assistance may be needed to those departments throughout the state. If you look at our request here as for 2020, it's really pretty minimal as far as we're concerned. We do have funds that were left over in the budget due to a position that was allocated to our department for a investigator, in which we did not hire that position whenever the directive had come about for budget cuts, because we didn't want to hire someone with the possibility of them not being retained. However, those funds are still in the budget, and we were asking to be able to use those funds to replace 2 aging vehicles in our fleet that have better than 180,000 miles in them, because those vehicles, we do have folks that are getting stranded on the side of the road in remote parts of the state. So we were asking for that consideration to change that. We're also asking for true-up funds for the fireworks taxes. As you're aware, our agency receives 40% of the taxes from the fireworks purchases throughout the state of Georgia, and that amount comes to $268,151 at this point.
I thought that number was higher.
Well, it is. We had already received the first portion of that. Total, it comes to right around $500,000, but what actually hasn't been put in our budget yet is right at $268,151.
Okay.
Of course, adjustment to insurance agency premiums, we're talking about $37 there. We have, as far as our reduction in budget for the 2020, that amount comes to $56,268, and those funds have came from what was allotted to us last year for paying proctors and monitors to go out and administer tests on behalf of the agency. Those funds are paid to individuals from local fire departments to go out that assists our agency to perform all those tests. But we were able to find our reduction percentage in that, so as to not have to go further to reduce what little staff we do have.
Wait a minute, so let me go back over that with you. I want to make sure I understand. Mr. Pritchett, so we allocated revenues so that, and this has been a recurring request by Gordon. He'd asked for these inspectors to go out and take a look at the various volunteer fire stations across the state, make sure that they were operating to standard.
Yes, sir.
And also we had requests, and that we put money in the budget to help with, trying to help with some of the training and testing.
That's correct.
So you're saying that that money now is being taken out of this budget?
Yes, we've had to do that, and the way that works, the folks that have been helping us to do that have came from a lot of the local agencies, and they had been doing it for free in the past, and without them providing that service to our agency, it would have been impossible to do that, and that's still the case. At one time in the very far past, before the recession had hit, we were able to pay those folks to go out and administer those tests on behalf of our agency, but because of the reduction request, we've had to, that's had to be where we find the amount of money to reach the percentage request.
But I mean, we just put that, I mean, it's been 10 years in the making to get some training money back in to pay those local firefighters for training and testing. And so we got the money in last session, I believe.
That's correct.
And then this go around, we're pulling it, the recommendation is to take that money out. Well,
yes, the reductions will take that money out. That's correct.
Okay, and then the dual investigators, we had investigators to go out because that was to assist with local fire departments and volunteer fire departments that did not have the investigatory staff, right, to check fires.
We did. Now, as far as the investigative side of it, as far as the fires, that's on the insurance commissioner's side of things, but what we send folks out to examine training records and documentation and training needs that the department may have is what those field staff go out for. Now, we did put in the budget last year for an investigator to handle issues such as firefighters who may have been arrested, or there was some kind of issue that may have come up of impropriety with those, investigate them to make sure that it was properly taken care of under the rules and laws of the state.
And that was the dual investigator grant writer position?
It was, that was the purpose of that position, yes.
Okay. So now that's being, the proposal here is to cut that, but you also want to take some of that money back to use for the vehicles.
That's right. The money that is still left for that, we were asking to transition that to vehicles, but if you'll look on to 2021, you will see our plans to take those responsibilities once again. We had asked for that position to take on the investigatory responsibilities, the grant writing and management of the grant process, and all the day-to-day operations, overseeing that the director, frankly, at this point is overwhelmed with and doesn't have the time. We were going to combine that into a deputy director's role and be able to provide all those services in the 2021 budget. And that request was going to be for approximately $70,000 would be the starting salary on that, but after benefits and everything, it would have been right at $113,000. And that's for the 2021.
Where do the numbers regarding the fireworks excise tax, what do you use that money for when you get it?
If you guys will flip to the back part of your packet there, what we've included is the by-year names of the departments that we have funded since 2018. And what this money has gone to, after speaking with Senator Mullis and Tyler Harper, was the intent of that bill was for those funds to go to local agencies that are in need of equipment and things that they cannot provide on their own. There are many fire departments throughout the state that struggle very much to the point to where we have individuals that have to take money out of their own personal pocket to pay for fuel in their fire trucks. So what we've tried to do with this money is for the folks make the recommendation to us for us to give them relief and help them to overcome those burdens throughout the state, is provided turnout gear and basic operations to those departments as well.
Bill, did you have a question, Chairman? Yeah. Representative Williams.
Question, I just want to make sure I heard you right. You're saying that there's some local fire departments that literally have to take money out of their pockets to pay for fuel.
That's exactly right.
I really thought that was just Barney Fife buying his bullets. I had no idea that in reality we were still doing that.
It's more common than what you would think across the state, especially in South Georgia. There are many departments that are very, very thin, and it is literally all they can do to function. But if it wasn't for the dedication of those members and the folks there that they have in those departments, they would not have any semblance of fire protection. That's been the core of this grant program, is to try to get help out to these folks from the state to fund these things to relieve that burden.
Okay. The number that we have for the fireworks money that's coming in, that number, where did you get the number for your fireworks revenues?
And I'll apologize too, some of the calculations here, I've given you the specifics. I'm telling you the best of my knowledge because this was sent to me yesterday by Mr. Henderson as I'm standing in his place here. But basically, it's 40% of their overall fireworks tax collected. And what we have here is what has not been collected in our budget yet. It's the true up for the fireworks taxes for the rest of the year.
Okay. All right. And that was, if my recollection was correct, that the part of the money that we had was the grant specialist was going to help with the administration of those grants. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. But there again, we've had to ask staff to step in from other areas and add to their workload to help take care of that, because we did not want to hire someone in anticipation of budget cuts to immediately have to let them go. So we were trying to do the best we could with what we had.
Okay. Mr. Pritchett, thank you very much. Other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, we appreciate your presentation, and we appreciate the I can't say that we appreciate it, but it didn't look like it's getting the attention it needs relevant to your volunteer fire departments. Because if you look at this list of where the firework money has been spent, you're seeing Sylvania Fire Department, Tazewell Volunteer Fire Department, Shiloh Community. I mean, you're seeing a lot of places that, you know, are remote and obviously in desperate need of getting some of this money. So,
Well, as the chair of the council, it's my responsibility to appoint members to our grant committee to look over those grants and go with the charge that was given to us by the legislature and make sure that the money is going where it needs to go, not to departments that have large budgets that can take care of themselves well.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is Peace Officers Standard and Training Council. We have Mike Ayers will come and present, I believe. We're in section 39.8 of your track sheet and budget. And if you're following along on the big budget, I think that's same page as 289 to 291. Mike, thanks for being with us today. Appreciate you coming to make this presentation.
Chairman Welsh, thank you so much. Committee members, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come by and appear before you today. Again, my name is Mike Ayers, and I'm the newly appointed Executive Director for the Peace Officer Standard and Training Council. To be as brief as possible, I do believe that it's important to point out that POST has three primary areas of responsibility. We approve and oversee the certification process of candidate officers. We track training hours, award advanced and specialized training, and we implement additional specialized training. For this year, I will tell you that working with the Georgia Public Safety Training Center, the GBI and other agencies, we're working on creating a physical agility test. Last year, in basic mandate in jail schools, we lost 3 candidates to pre-existing health conditions, deaths, to include injuries. In addition to using this as a screening tool, we're looking at conducting an enhanced physical examination for those candidates, as well as psychological screening to make sure that the persons that we are bringing into our community of law enforcement officers maintain the stability to be able to perform that function appropriately. One other thing that we're looking at, and we're going to New Jersey at their invitation next month, is to look at a program dealing with officer resiliency training. As you may know, New Jersey has the highest suicide rate among police officers in the nation. They instituted this program, cut their suicide rate in half. In law enforcement, we have a program which is called the Below 100 program. The goal is to have less than 100 law enforcement involved deaths across the country in any given year. We don't make that goal, but we make every attempt to reach that. But what we don't even count is the fact that more than twice that many officers commit suicide every year. That's a very, very serious situation that with the Georgia Public Safety Training Center, Georgia State Patrol and the GBI and Department of Natural Resources, we're trying to develop some training that might be beneficial to law enforcement and prison personnel throughout the state. POST also oversees the implementation of training for approximately 59,000 law enforcement and correctional officers working in both state and local law enforcement and correctional agencies. We oversee 27 training academies. During that time, we also look at issues of officer misconduct. Just last year alone, we signed 190 emergency felony suspensions of police officers and revoked almost 800 law enforcement officer certifications, which incidentally is the highest rate in the nation. It's not because I believe that we have worse officers than anywhere else in the state. It's that I do believe that we take that oath very seriously in the state of Georgia. We're able to accomplish this with a relatively small organization of people that I'm very proud to serve with. They do an exemplary job. And with those remarks, if you have any questions, I'd be prepared to address the budget at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Williams.
I was noticing, and maybe you were going to get to this, but there's $400,000 left out.
I'm sorry.
There was $400,000 that was not in your budget, It was not put in your budget for the training of newly elected sheriffs. We usually have 35, 45. What are you going to do about that with the election?
You're correct, sir. I talked with Terry Norris, who brought that to my attention. That is money that is mandated, if I understand correctly. So I am waiting for that money to be placed into my operating budget. It is not a line item per se of my budget. It goes to cover the salaries and the cost of the sheriff-elect school.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you.
Is the following up on that, is that the 125 public safety training courses that we're talking about?
No, sir.
No.
This will be the Sheriff's Elect Academy
Okay.
for those sheriffs that are elected in this election cycle.
Yeah, that's statutorily mandated.
Yes, sir. It's statutorily mandated, and it works out to be around $400,000 to $401,000. It has been in the past, but that fluctuates depending on how many sheriffs are actually elected.
Right, and we usually make some adjustments as we see, but if we're cutting, is that being cut? I don't see that in the budget item right here for the cut.
To be honest with you, Mr. Chairman, I am unaware if it's being cut or not. It just doesn't appear. It's my understanding it has not appeared in the past in our budget.
Okay.
That when we get to that point, that the money is then allocated for that.
Okay. All right, then the other, following up with the questions, my understanding is that you've had to, how many vacant positions do you have within the agency?
Currently, at this time, I have one vacant investigator position, which, as you know, represents 10% of my investigative staff.
And when did didn't you have someone in that position though?
No, sir. I had someone in one of those positions. I promoted them to a director's position. As you may be aware, Director Powell is getting close to retirement, so I'm trying to transition someone into their position so that we can have a smooth transition of power. And they are also able to help me with hearings and things that go on in court and continue to maintain some degree of a case load.
Okay.
The one actual position that I have vacant was vacant at the time that I took over as the executive director. We maintained that position open when we were notified that we would be taking a 4% budget cut.
Was that position filled at any time?
Not during my tenure, no, sir, not in the last 8 months. It was filled before that.
Okay, so is the cut that's recommended, is that cut for the full year salary for that criminal investigator or just
Yes,
for
sir.
the 8 months?
It would be $91,000 as their full year salary. Because they were not hired during that, we had that position vacant for the entire year.
Okay. Then also there was, explain to us what that criminal investigator does so we can understand the importance or
Certainly.
the relative importance of the position.
Yes, sir. Primarily what our criminal investigators do, they are assigned a geographical area of the state, multiple counties. When we receive notification at post counsel that an officer has received some sort of disciplinary action up to include termination or arrest, we institute an investigation into that matter. That investigator then goes out and collects those documents. If an agency has done an internal investigation, they will go out and collect the documents of the internal investigation. They will do any follow-up interviews that need to be done, interview the officer, interview staff that may have been affected by this, put all this together into a file for us, then reduce that into a minimalized version of that is then incorporated into a book that is presented to our probable cause committee. They will then look at each of those cases and make a determination to forward to council a recommendation for whatever administrative action post-council deems appropriate, whether that be some sanction, probation, all the way up to decertification.
Okay, and then when you were talking, when you opened, you spoke about what sounded like to me a law enforcement support officer or a program by which you'd be able to help officers deal with some of the psychological impacts of the job and provide that support to offset suicides or self-treatment.
Yes, sir. I'm very excited about this program. Actually, as you know,
How much is this program going to cost?
We have no idea at this point in time. It's very much in the exploratory phases.
Yes.
We hope to be able to do this very similar to a train-the-trainer type program, where we will send academy staff from GIPSTIC or people from our other state agencies, train them, and then we will be able to put on that training. Depending on how all this works out, I'll have to bring that before the Sheriff's Association, the Chiefs Association, try to fund it through those two agencies.
I bring it up because we did a similar program that we were doing through the Department of Public Safety. And so that may serve as some help for a template as you move through that.
Actually, sir, this goes hand in hand with peer-to-peer counseling, which I think is what you're referring to. Those individuals that are involved in peer-to-peer counseling are actually going to be involved in this program. So I visualize it as being an expansion of that program to be able to provide assistance, further assistance.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from members of the committee? We have one from Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask about two topics that you raised. One is the issue of officer suicide, and what, if any, studies or examinations have taken place to look at causes? And I know that there can be many. It can be the stresses of the job. It could also be just financial stresses or home life, all those kind of things. Are you looking into the causes that are taking place to see if there are any common denominators or things that we might be able to make changes to help people make different decisions?
Yes, sir. Actually, what you named, it's a coalition of all of the above. Police officers typically have a shroud around them of secrecy that they just typically do not want to discuss any chink in their emotional armor, if you will. And because of that, just like we treat military veterans coming back from the Gulf with PTSD, you run into the same very, very real issue with law enforcement officers too, that deal with that day in and day out, getting up, putting on that uniform, getting in that patrol car, and when they kiss their family goodbye every morning, whether they want to admit it or not, they know that there's a very real possibility that they won't end that shift. I've got a dear friend of mine that every time I go to D.C., I go to visit his name on that wall. And, you know, the last time I was there, behind his name, Billy Ray Giles, is a photograph, a sonogram photograph. It says, "Congratulations, Granddad." When he was killed, his children were this tall. So it's a very real thing that over a long period of time, it does have an effect on an officer. Financial issues can be a problem as well. Alcohol, codependency, those kinds of issues also. But those are all typically coping mechanisms of a deeper problem. And that is, we live in a society today where predominantly police officers are not well thought of. And so I think that this resiliency training is a great first step for our state to get involved in, get behind, and drive this train. And let's do something for those officers for their long-term health, wealth, and benefit down the road. I don't expect this to be a process that I can implement in 3 months. I suspect that this is going to be a journey, but with the help of the legislature, I know that we can do something and do something very positive for law enforcement officers across the state.
Thank you. I applaud your efforts, and I have some understanding of what you're talking about. I deployed 3 times, so I know that it's an issue that a number of people are wrestling with, and a challenge. The other issue that I want to dive down into just a little bit is the revocation of certifications. Similarly, do you have are there common denominators? Are there areas where you're seeing dominant trends on why people are losing their certification? And if so, can you talk about that and what might be able to be done?
It seems to be the biggest issue that we have that leads to an officer being decertified is not usually the act that they commit, it is the fact that they are untruthful about it. Deception about something that you do rises to the level of a Brady violation. And under Brady, that officer's testimony is worthless in a court of law. They can easily be impeached. One of the ways that I will be honest with you that I'm looking to approach this through the help of some assistance with some folks at the GBI is to draft a contract with newly arriving, newly certified police officers, that they sign a contract understanding this is what is expected of you as a law enforcement officer, and your truthfulness is non-negotiable. So if you are found to be deceptive, not by your department, but by an investigation conducted by post counsel, then you understand going into that you will surrender your certification, because you cannot be a police officer. You can be a lot of things, but you just can't be a police officer.
I agree with you on that, and Chairman Welch may have similar experience. Whenever I prepare witnesses for depositions and I defend people through regulatory matters and criminal matters, as I tell them, you have to tell the truth. You may not want to, but you have to tell the truth. If you tell the truth, I can help you. If you don't tell the truth, I can't.
And I do believe there's a difference between a mistake of fact and just willful deception. And I'm, of course, I'm much more concerned with those people who are willfully deceptive.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Director, thank you very much for being here today. I appreciate your service to the state and appreciate your service in terms of overseeing all the standards that are required for our police officers. And I appreciate the compassion that you sincerely have for those officers that may need assistance. And I look forward to seeing that program develop.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, next up on our agenda, Public Safety Training Council. Chris Wigington is here, and I know his staff is with him. Glad to see you both. We're going to be on page section 39.9 of your track sheet in the budget, and also on page 289 to 291 of your big budget if you're looking at that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Thank you for taking the time to let us present today. Most of you has visited the training center, and you've got a vast idea of what we do. The last 5 years, we've serviced over 250,000 public safety professionals throughout the state and the nation, primarily the majority of them throughout the state of Georgia. With that, that's just kind of an overview of what we do. We teach anything that you can imagine public safety oriented, from law enforcement to firefighting, coroners, EMTs, you name it, we touch it. Even the National Guard trains at our facility a good bit. So with that, I'll jump straight into the 2020 budget changes, and I'll save the time for the questions at the end. So the first line item is 39.9.2. We had done a study several years ago. We'd had a lot of turnover within our fiscal services division, so we had asked for money to address that turnover rate. That money was put into our budget last year, and then we never received it, so it's a line item that they're asking to permanently remove. 39.9.3, it freezes 3 positions. One is a CIT training instructor, one is a volunteer firefighter instructor, and the third is a student services manager position at our registration desk. 39.9.4 reduces expenses allocated with classes or cancellation of classes. That would be 36 different public safety courses. 39.9.5 is reducing of operating expenditures. That is software licensing, travel, contracts, along those lines. The next is 39.9.6, and that would terminate the remainder of the contract this year with North Central Police Academy. That is the only contract academy that's left in the state that does basic law enforcement training. It equates to pass-through money that was allocated to the training center that we simply passed to this North Central. And
where's that location?
It's 39.9.6. Where is it located? I'm sorry, geographically, I'm sorry.
Geographically, not in the
Yeah,
budget.
Cobb County, Austell.
All right, now, with the reduction on, that you mentioned on 39.9.2, have the retention issues changed any since we last spoke last year? And we allocated the $119,000 for the retention?
Somewhat, it's still it's still an issue. We still have some turnover within that division.
So did we get it wrong by adding the money in?
No, sir, I don't think so.
And how many vacant positions do you have?
Currently, we have 23 vacant positions. The majority of those vacant positions are awaiting approval for strategic hire.
I'm sorry, say that again?
They're awaiting approval for
All
strategic
20?
hire.
All 20, how many?
Yeah, 23.
23.
So 3 of those positions would be the other 3 that I just talked about in the freeze of those positions.
Okay. All right. And how long have the positions been vacant?
They all vary. Some we've held when the initial cut was advertised. We held a couple of positions to try to make up for funds to anticipate the cuts. So some of those have been held for some time. A lot of them, the vast majority of them has just been for a short term. I'd say 30 days or less.
Okay. The ones that have been, you say for a longer period of time than 30 days, how much longer? Months, years?
I would say 3 to 4 of them, maybe 6 months. And again, it was just to recoup the money for the cuts to make sure we'd have it in our budget.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. You want to go hit the 21 budget? I think this.
Okay. So 21 proposed budget is 39.9.4. It permanently eliminates the money for fiscal services. 39.9.5 freezes 4 positions. The 3 that I mentioned earlier that would be held, plus 1 student service clerk at the registration desk. It would affect 125 different courses that we offer. And then, again, the 39.9.7 is a reduction in operating cost. And then 39.9.8 would reduce or eliminate the funds in its entirety to North Central Academy.
Now, is that going to shift individuals over to the Rome Academy or somewhere else? So where's that training going to be picked up?
As far as the cuts,
Yeah, if you're cutting the law enforcement, the basic classes, the law enforcement basic classes with North Central Law Enforcement Academy, where are those newly minted officers going to go? Where do they wind up taking
they
class?
can apply to our academy, but we have a max number on all of those academies as well. So it's going to be first come,
Aren't you
first
already
served.
at max numbers presently in all of your academies?
Yes, sir. We have to request waivers at the majority of all of our academies through post to exceed the minimum or the maximum number of students currently.
Currently, at all of them?
Yes, sir.
Across the state? So from
There might be
Rome
one
to
or two that we do
Forsyth,
not.
it's Savannah?
Yes, sir.
And that's the reason why we have a contract with North Central Law Enforcement Academy, isn't it?
Well, I think that contract existed prior to us exceeding capacity. There were several academies historically that existed, even agency academies or old contract academies is what they called them.
Mm-hmm.
So the city of Atlanta, Gwinnett, historically, years ago, the state funneled money to any academy. And then at some point, if they had an agency-specific academy.
So how many trainees are we gonna have to shift from the North Central to your existing academies, which are already full?
North Central averages about 100 to 120 students a year.
Okay.
And that's for basic
So are you
law
gonna
enforcement
be able to
certification.
ask for another waiver from post to, they're right here, you can probably catch them before they leave.
They give us a waiver when we act, but at some point, we can't exceed a certain maximum number for safety
You
reasons.
might have to ask the fire standards also for the fire marshal to get permission, right?
That's right.
Go ahead.
So the courses you aren't cutting, the 125, it's not like you got empty seats and you just tell them, okay, you can't take the night class, you gotta fit yourself in the day class, because those classes are full, you're saying. There are no empty seats.
Very few classes we offer have empty seats.
Wow, okay.
And when you're talking about training, I mean, there are more individuals who need ongoing training every year for law enforcement, correct?
So there's a requirement for all public safety. They have to get annual reoccurring training every year. So it doesn't matter what aspect of public safety you're in, whether it's fire or law enforcement, coroners, 911 operator, they're required to get reoccurring training every year.
And
So we offer that as
I know
well.
at Forsyth, you also do your fire training as well, right?
Yes.
So that consumes some of the occupancy limits that you have at the Forsyth facility.
It is one of the classes, there's 40 classes to the fire academy that will be cut. And a variety of classes. So it's not just like one topic of class. So it will be 40 classes and a variety of different topics that will be cut.
So tell us what impact that's going to have to the skills and the knowledge that both law enforcement and fire personnel will have that are in the field.
Well, and I will say that we're working internally to see where we can maximize student population, enhance on some online training. Sometimes class maximum number is set because of a certain room size. So we're going to look and see if we can maybe adjust that. But some of the classes that have practical exercises as far as the driving and the firearms, the safety aspect of that, we can't increase those numbers more than where it's at now because of the liability associated with it. But based on the numbers that we ran in these classes historically, in the 2021 proposal, there would be 2,374 students that would be affected.
How many?
2,374 students.
40 classes. When you say that they're affected, I mean, what does that mean? 2,000
If
students
that means they
affected.
will not receive training in these classes. So that doesn't mean they won't receive training at all. We still have other classes that we'll offer. But as far as these classes that are cut, that's been our historic.
Why are these classes targeted?
Some of them because of cost, to be honest with you. And we offer a lot of them more than, so CIT classes, we offer about 100 of those a year. So we're cutting 10 of those, knock that back to 90. When you get back to some of the instructor type courses or the PIT training courses, a lot of that is tied to cost. Those are very costly classes.
Chairman Ballinger.
And this is just really a question more for my personal edification as we're talking about kind of discontinuing this contract. I know in Cherokee County, my home county, we have the Roger Garrison training facility. How does that integrate into kind of how y'all operate? Is that kind of a contract facility? I'm not really sure kind of the logistics of how that works, but I do know that we have law enforcement from kind of the area coming there. So does the sheriff, does Frank and his staff offer that, or how does that work?
So anyone that is post-certified instructors can teach reoccurring or in what's called in-service training to maintain their hours. Mm-hmm. Where we come in, being an academy, we offer the majority of basic law enforcement training in the state. I'd say we offer 90% of all the peace officers certified in the state come through one of our academies. And then anything that leads to an advanced certification. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be, that can't be done at a local agency just because of the rules surrounding that. So it's got to have some standards and checks and balances associated with it. So if you want to be an instructor, most of those come through our facility. Okay. If you want to, again, if it leads to a certification, the majority of that comes through our facility. Okay. So there is things that they can teach at the Sheriff's Department.
So in other words, they could cover like the basic kind of continuing ed, requirements. I know, obviously nobody's going to franchise out and do mandate, but, they could go through and do kind of like the in-service training that they need, but they're not going to advance up.
That's right.
Kind of in-house. Okay, thank you.
Now, to be clear, the classes that you're cutting, hopefully the classes are not de-escalation classes, because we've spent quite a bit of time discussing the issue of assisting officers in training on de-escalation, and I know that your agency has been a leader in addressing those issues before the federal government started looking at it to ensure that these situations didn't result in a violent outcome for either for the officer or the party on the other side. I'm hoping that you haven't cut any of those classes. No more.
Some of these classes have a de-escalation portion of them. They're not de-escalation. It's not the only topic that they discuss, but CIT, for instance, the mental health first aid, the use of force instructor type classes.
Mental health, wait a minute, say that mental health,
So mental health first aid,
that is being cut?
just 4 of the classes, so not in its entirety, but just 4 of the offerings that we would offer throughout the year.
Chris, I think it's. Yeah.
We offer about 30 of those a year.
Okay. Would you mind providing us a breakdown of the exact classes that are being cut, how many in each category?
I will.
Yeah.
I'll follow up with you on that. And based on the numbers of the students affected, just so you know.
On this sheet here that you handed out here?
Yes, sir. Everything is broke down on here if you need any further information.
But going to Bill's point, I think we need to know what's the total, so you can see, relatively speaking, what is it? I mean, I don't know if that's all the classes that would have been offered, or if it's half of them.
Okay.
That would be helpful to see, relatively speaking, what it is.
There's nothing that we're cutting at 100%, I will tell you that. There's not any class that's on here that we do not have multiple offerings of. And based on the number of students that's affected, that's still only about 1% of our student population. So
Okay.
based on that, we're still going to meet a pretty good demand, but still that's 1% of the population that's not going to be covered.
All right. Yeah. Go ahead.
So the mental health, what was the class that we were just, the mental health education? Or
Mental health first aid.
Yep.
Right.
mental health first aid. So that's 33 offerings a year?
That's correct.
And so if we're just cutting 4, so there's only going to be 26, 28?
Yes, sir.
29 offerings a year? Okay, so
Yeah, that's what.
And those classes on the mental health, we normally offer that in the CIT classes in a pretty good number because those are taught in local communities. We actually push an instructor to local communities throughout the state.
Chairman Powell.
Thank you, Chris. I want to thank you and your staff for the good job that y'all do down at the training center. And it pains me to see some of these guys, because I know where a lot of them are going to wind up on the local governments if we can't connect all the dots to them. But there's one thing I did notice. This being an election year, we've always been able to budget for the new sheriff's training. And usually we have 40, 60, sometimes more new sheriffs each year on the local level, and they've always had the new, y'all always taught that new sheriff's training course.
They actually teach it, and so the Sheriff's Association teaches it. We help with some of the stuff, but they use our facility and move around, so we help partner with them, but they do a lot of that internally.
Yeah, but there was always a cost that we covered for that. But I don't see anything. Has any of that been broached with y'all about the same traditions that we've always done?
That money passed through post. It did not pass through us. So it was a pass through, but it passed through Peace Officer Standards and Training Council, not through the training center.
And that was what we were asking before, to try to find out if that $400,000 was still in the. We couldn't see a cut in the budget, but it is a cut. The post is being cut.
But it's never been in our budget. It's always been in the post budget.
So I think we just need to follow up with post a little bit. I'll talk to Mike a little bit more and make sure that we're not seeing a slash in that training. Because it's mandated by state law that they receive that training, and we fund that. Okay. Other questions? That's a good question. Any other? Thank you all very much. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Last one up is our Office of Highway Safety. Alan Poole is going to present on behalf, I believe. We're happy to have him. And okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Poole, how are you?
Doing fine, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Yes.
For allowing us to be here today and present our budget. Along with me, I have Josh Turner. He's the Director of the Driver Services. So, Mr. Chair, Drivers Education Commission, excuse me for that. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to start off by bringing to your attention our budget, which is $3,545,305, is pretty much status quo from the previous year. We have met the requirements that the governor proposed, a 4% cut for this fiscal year, along with a 6% for FY 2021. As you can see, if you have the handout, for 2020, the cuts has been made based on the recommendation from OPB, and we have met that requirement. And basically, Mr. Chairman, ours is status quo.
How much of the overall budget is coming out of your Joshua's Laws funds?
Josh portion from driver services is right about 2 million. Let me find that number.
And I guess what I'm getting to is that in the
2,913,000.
Okay. And so with that, then there's a cut to drivers' educational services of $141,812. So is that money that's not being allocated from Joshua's fund, Joshua's Law, that would otherwise be allocated?
It would be used for the scholarships, and that was in an amount of probably roughly 105 scholarships out of almost 6,000 scholarships from this year.
That's being cut?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, and then that's the same, we're seeing also a similar cut, I guess that is, in the 21 budget.
Yes, sir.
And that amounts to $212,718.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Questions for members of the committee? You've been flying blind? Mr. Gravely left his glasses up here, so. I appreciate, I know you're taking over the office and getting orientated in it. How long have you been in so far?
February 16th will be a year, and I'm getting my feet under me.
Yeah.
And it's coming together. We successfully this year, we've reduced crashes and injuries and fatalities about 2%, a little over 2%. So I think what we're doing, we're beginning to get the message out to the motoring public.
And also about distracted driving, getting that message out. I know that the office was integral in trying to help educate and make people more aware of our distracted driving laws and the hands-free law of the state. How's that going?
Well, we hope the legislature this year look at the distracted driving law a little bit closer, and hopefully we can get back to where we were in 2010. However, I don't know if the legislature has the appetite to increase it or strengthen it a little bit, but we hope that we can make some amendments to it.
Okay. Well, I hope you'll work with John Carson and maybe make some suggestions or recommendations to John, who was a sponsor of that legislation.
Yes, sir. And he's made a couple amendments to it as far as the fee structure goes, where, you know, you would double in a work area or either a school area.
Good.
And so we're looking at some things of that nature so that it would be palatable to the legislatures.
Okay. Well, thank you for those comments and those recommendations, and thank you for helping keep our highways safer, safe place to drive. It's an ongoing, everyday battle, but thank you for your service. Thank you for your staff's service as well. And we'll review these cuts and see what we can do with them.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll bring our committee meeting to a close. And tomorrow we'll be meeting again at 1 o'clock, same room, and we have the Department of Community Supervision, Corrections, Investigation, GBI, Department of Juvenile Justice and Public Safety will be for us tomorrow. And I appreciate the committee members' diligence and willingness to stay the long hours that we've spent reviewing these budget recommendations. And with that, we'll stand adjourned until tomorrow. Thank you.